Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going to be looking at a career path. Well, that's fascinated people for centuries, really. Mediumship.
Okay.
So we're diving into, a stack of resources from RoleCatcher. They're a career development platform.
Right.
And we're going to try to understand what this profession, what it actually, what it entails.
Okay.
And, hopefully separate fact from fiction while we're at it.
Yeah.
And to help us navigate this unique terrain, I've got our resident expert in deciphering these unusual career paths.
Yeah.
They've got a knack for spotting those subtle details
Thank you.
that often hold, the most significant insights.
I appreciate that. I'm happy to be here. Yeah, mediumship, that's one of those fields that sparks curiosity and skepticism, kind of an equal measure, don't you think?
Absolutely. And it seems like RoleCatcher kind of acknowledges this right from the get-go.
Uh-huh.
Their guide, it defines a medium as someone who acts as a communicator between, the natural and spiritual worlds. But they emphasize that they claim to convey these messages from spirits.
Right. Right.
It's an interesting choice of words. What do you think?
Yeah, it is interesting. It really speaks to the inherent challenge of, well, exploring a realm that exists beyond, I think, what you can scientifically prove. And I think RoleCatcher is very careful in the way they present information because they don't actually make any claims about, whether mediumship is real or not.
Right.
But what they do is they then go into the profound impact these claimed messages can have on people.
Okay.
Regardless of whether they even believe or not. We're talking about potentially life-altering information here.
Yeah.
That's being shared in a deeply personal and often very vulnerable setting.
That's a really important point, I think. It's not just about whether someone, believes in spirits or not.
Right.
It's about recognizing that there are very real emotional, weight to these interactions that they carry, which might explain why RoleCatcher really emphasizes empathy and clear communication as essential skills for mediums. It makes sense. You're dealing with people's deepest emotions.
Exactly.
Their grief, maybe they're trying to connect with people that they've lost.
Yeah, and to deliver messages and advice or warnings that are perceived to be coming from, a deceased loved one.
Yeah.
That takes immense sensitivity and skill. Clients might be in a fragile emotional state seeking solace, or answers. And the way a medium conveys that information can make all the difference.
So it's not just about relaying information, it's about holding space for those emotions.
Yeah.
And sort of facilitating healing.
Totally.
Now, I'm curious about the how. Like, how does this all work? The guide mentions mediums conveying statements or images. Does that mean there's no one right way to be a medium?
It seems that way. Yeah, the guide goes on to explain that some mediums might rely on clairvoyance,
Okay.
which is essentially clear seeing,
Right.
while others might experience clairaudience, so clear hearing.
Okay.
And then there are those who use tools like, tarot cards
Right.
to help them channel information.
So you've got your I see dead people, folks.
Yes.
You've got your intuitive listeners and then your tarot card interpreters. That's a fascinatingly diverse range of approaches.
It is. And this actually highlights the fact that mediumship as a field is largely unregulated.
Oh, yeah.
There's no official licensing board. There's no exam you have to pass. This can make it challenging for someone who's seeking guidance to discern between a genuinely gifted practitioner and someone who might not be what they claim to be.
Right. That's a crucial point. And it's a perfect segue into something I wanted to address. The myths.
Okay.
Misconceptions surrounding mediumship.
Right.
And thankfully, RoleCatcher doesn't shy away from these questions.
Yeah.
They tackle them head on.
Okay.
For instance, are mediums just glorified fortune tellers? Can they actually predict the future?
It's a question a lot of people have, and the guide provides a very nuanced answer.
Okay.
They say that while some mediums might receive what they call intuitive insights about the future,
Okay.
their primary role, it isn't fortune telling.
This is less about predicting next week's lottery numbers.
Right.
And more about connecting with whoever's on the other side.
Exactly. It's about bridging that perceived gap between, the living and the departed.
Okay.
And this actually feeds into another important point the guide makes, which is that mediumship isn't this inherently dark or evil practice,
Okay.
even though that's how it's often portrayed,
Right.
in the media.
It's true. Think about why someone might seek out a medium in the first place.
Yeah.
It's often driven by grief, a desire for closure. Maybe they just want to feel connected to loved ones who have passed. I mean, these are These are deeply human needs.
Absolutely. And the guide recognizes this. They explain that mediums often work with individuals who are, grieving,
Yeah.
who are searching for answers or maybe hoping for a sign from, from beyond. It's about providing solace, understanding and a sense of connection with the spiritual realm.
It's interesting how the guide frames mediumship as a way of providing that solace and that connection, for people who are grieving.
Yeah.
It really shifts the perspective away from that stereotypical image of, spooky seances and cryptic predictions and stuff.
Right.
But it does make me wonder, like, what skills are needed to navigate those waters,
to
facilitate that kind of deep connection with your clients.
Yeah, you're right. It's not a skill set you see on just any resume.
Right.
What's fascinating is that RoleCatcher actually tries to list out specific abilities you need to be a medium,
right,
almost as if they're analyzing any other job. And surprisingly, they actually ranked social perceptiveness as the most important skill, even above something like persuasion. Why do you think that is?
That is interesting, because you would think that, especially in a field where there's so much skepticism,
right,
that persuasion would be, at the top of the list.
Yeah.
Maybe it's because of the nature of the work itself.
Yeah, exactly. We're not talking about, convincing someone to buy a product.
Right.
Or agree to some business deal. A medium is dealing with matters of the heart, right? With people's deepest fears, their hopes, their longing to connect with loved ones who might not be here.
Right.
And so being able to read those emotional cues, figuring out where someone is in their grief journey, and then responding with empathy and understanding. Those are really essential.
It makes you really think about the level of social and emotional intelligence it takes to do that.
Yeah.
To do this kind of work effectively.
Totally.
And ethically.
Yeah, you're not just conveying information here. You're holding space for someone's grief.
Yeah.
Their vulnerability, it's a big responsibility.
Yeah.
And as they gain experience, these skills, they can evolve as their careers progress.
Okay.
RoleCatcher even outlines different stages, like a career path for a medium.
Okay.
From entry level to senior positions.
Now, that's not something I expected.
Right.
It's almost funny to think about, like, a career ladder, but for spear communication.
Right.
What does a senior level medium even look like? Are they doing, like, executive level seances?
It's a funny image, but in reality, it probably looks a lot like mentorship.
Okay.
And guidance within the field. The guide suggests that aspiring mediums, they might start by assisting more experienced practitioners.
Okay.
This could involve observing client interactions, maybe prepping the space for readings, taking notes during the sessions, things like that.
So it's kind of like an apprenticeship.
Yeah.
Learning the craft from the people who've been doing it.
Right, exactly.
That's fascinating to think that even in a field as, I don't know, intangible as this one seems,
right,
there's still structure.
It speaks to the dedication, to cultivate these abilities, to build a practice. And as mediums get experience and confidence, they might start taking on their own clients.
Okay.
Doing readings, but still maybe under the guidance of a mentor. And over time, they might develop a niche, a specialization. Okay. Like maybe they connect with children who've passed, or they help spirits that are having trouble crossing over.
So just like any profession, you can specialize.
Yeah.
What I find encouraging about this is that there doesn't seem to be just one right way to do this.
Exactly. You find your own path, your own strengths, your own way of connecting and communicating.
Right.
And the guide really stresses that maintaining ethical standards, a commitment to your clients, that's crucial.
Speaking of ethical considerations, I'm curious how mediums deal with the skepticism and the criticism that probably comes with the territory.
Yeah.
Because let's face it, it's a field that invites doubt.
For sure. Skepticism is, it's something that every medium is going to have to deal with at some point.
Yeah.
And RoleCatcher stresses ethical conduct as a way to build trust, build credibility.
So what does ethical mediumship look like in practice? What are the rules?
Well, one of the most important things is confidentiality.
Okay.
Just like a therapist or a lawyer, mediums are often told deeply personal, really sensitive information.
Right.
And, it's shared in a vulnerable setting. Maintaining that trust, that is paramount.
It makes sense. You're creating a safe space.
Yes.
Where people can can feel comfortable exploring their grief.
Exactly.
And connecting with whoever without being judged for it.
Exactly. And that actually ties into another ethical consideration that the guide raises, and that's, being honest about what you can do.
Okay.
What your limitations are.
So no guaranteeing contact with a specific spirit?
Right.
Or claiming to know the future with absolute certainty.
Right. Ethical mediums, they emphasize that spirit communication, by its very nature, it's fluid, it's unpredictable.
Mm-hmm.
You can offer insights, you can offer possibilities,
Right.
but you don't make promises you can't keep.
It's about being upfront about the nature of what you do.
Precisely. And this ties into another crucial point. No manipulation, no coercion.
Right.
A reading should never be used to pressure a client into, making a big life decision.
Okay.
Or to make them feel afraid or guilty.
So if a spirit tells you to sell all your possessions and join the circus, you might want to get a second opinion.
Probably a good idea.
Hmm.
Ethical mediums encourage their clients to use the information, for comfort, for guidance, maybe even a new perspective.
Yeah.
But ultimately, the client has to make their own choice.
It's about empowerment.
Yes.
Giving people the space to process their experience and make their own choices.
Exactly. It's about autonomy, self-determination. It's important.
This has been really insightful. We've talked about the nuances of spirit communication, the ethical stuff, even, how a medium's career can develop. There's more to this profession than, what you see on the surface.
Definitely.
But before we wrap up, I want to talk about the work environment. When we picture a medium working, we often think of these dimly lit parlors and crystal balls.
Right.
Is that the reality?
You're right. I mean, the media always portrays this one specific and very exaggerated image of what a medium is and where they work.
Right.
In reality, the work environment, it can really vary. And the RoleCatcher guide actually gets into some specifics about this.
Oh. Like what? Yeah. Is it all incense and Ouija boards, or are we talking more like, modern offices?
It seems like, much like the practitioners themselves, the workspaces, they're diverse.
Okay.
Some mediums, they work out of their homes.
Okay.
Create this warm, inviting space. Mm-hmm. Others might have a more traditional office space.
Okay.
Or even, rent a room in a spiritual center or, somewhere that does holistic healing.
So there's a real range depending on personal preference and who they're working with.
Exactly. What's interesting is that the guide also points out how much technology is impacting this field.
Okay.
Just like many professions, mediums are online now.
Right.
They're using social media to connect with potential clients, and some of them are even doing readings remotely.
It makes sense. I mean, with everything being online these days.
Right.
It makes it more accessible, too, I would imagine.
Absolutely. Someone might not have a medium in their local area, but now they can access these services online. The guide mentions online tarot readings, video calls, things like that. It means mediums can connect with a global audience.
It's fascinating how technology is bridging that gap.
Yeah.
But it makes you think about, are there challenges?
You're right. The guide does say that mediums, they're especially vulnerable online to scams, to criticism, even harassment from skeptics.
That makes sense. I mean, it's the internet.
Right.
People can be pretty harsh when they're anonymous. So how do they handle that?
It's tricky.
Yeah.
The guide suggests that, you have to be really transparent about your practice. Be upfront about how you work, what your limitations are. And when you respond to critics, be professional. Be compassionate.
Okay.
It's about drawing those clear boundaries. Engage in a constructive dialogue, if you can, but don't let that negativity derail you.
So you really need a thick skin to do this kind of work, especially online.
Absolutely. It's not a profession for everyone.
We've been really digging into this idea of what it means to be a medium.
Right.
And it seems like technology is playing a bigger and bigger role.
Yeah.
But I got to say, I keep coming back to the emotional side of it.
Mm-hmm.
It's got to be tough, right? Dealing with people's grief, their loss, all the time.
It's true. It takes a toll.
Not just on the clients, but on the mediums themselves, I'd imagine.
Exactly. And RoleCatcher actually talks about that a lot.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they really emphasize self-care for mediums.
That makes sense.
Setting boundaries so you don't burn out. Even getting support from other people in the field.
Because to be that conduit for these really intense emotions.
Yeah.
Maybe even tap into experiences from the other side.
These heavy stuff.
It's got to take a lot of strength, emotional and spiritual, I guess.
Absolutely. And it really highlights something important for anyone seeking out a medium.
Okay.
Find someone who not only has the skills and the ethics,
Right.
but who also takes care of themselves,
Because that shows they understand the weight of what they're doing.
Exactly.
Which brings me to something the guide mentioned that I found really interesting.
Okay.
They said anyone can develop these abilities.
Right. And that's a claim that's been around forever.
Is it true? Or is that just like Hollywood stuff?
Well, the guide says it's nuanced.
Okay, how so?
Some people might be naturally drawn to this. Maybe they're more sensitive.
Right.
But for most, it takes real dedication, practice, connecting with your intuition.
So it's not like you just wake up one day and suddenly you're talking to ghosts.
Chuckles. Probably not, no.
It's more about training your mind, your senses.
Exactly. They talk about meditation, energy work, things like tarot.
Okay.
Quieting the mind, listening to that inner voice.
Almost like learning a new language, but instead of words, it's energy, frequencies.
That's a great way to put it.
Makes you wonder, what if we all have that potential?
It's a powerful thought.
Hidden inside us, just waiting to be unlocked.
And that's what's so fascinating about mediumship.
This desire to connect with what's beyond,
To find answers, to find peace, even to one faced with the biggest mysteries.
As we wrap up our deep dive today, that's something I want everyone to think about.
It's been quite a journey.
Whether you're a believer or a skeptic, mediumship makes you consider what's possible.
Beyond what we can see, what we can prove scientifically.
Exactly. It challenges our understanding of the world, of the universe.
And that's a good thing, to keep asking questions.
Huge thank you to our expert for diving deep with us today.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, we hope this sparked your curiosity.
Keep exploring.
Keep asking those big questions, and we'll see you on our next deep dive.